Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast series for beginner web developers and general web enthusiasts. Now, introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Caines, and Ed Mann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Three Devs and a Maybe. My name's Ed Mann, and today it's a two-man pod. I'm here with Mr. Michael Budd. How are we doing, Michael?
I'm good, Michael.
I haven't called you Michael in a while. Mixter.
You said a while. I don't think you've ever called me that in my life.
I know. Your real name, you're born with name. I know. Yeah, it's Mixter, Buds, the Buddinator, Buddosaurus Rex. There's a lot. There's a lot of going.
I get called a lot of things. Yeah.
How are we doing, man?
I'm pretty good actually. Yeah, how about yourself?
I'm really good. Yeah, I'm looking forward. It's a really weird day. It's always good to start a podcast off with the weather because that's but it's a really weird day. It's really cold outside, but it's really sunny. I know. Uh-huh. So you go out thinking, "Oh, I can wear a t-shirt." No, you can't. There we go. That is a life lesson there.
Yeah.
But no. So how's your week been, man? It's been a couple of weeks actually since we last spoke.
Yeah, so obviously I think last podcast I explained to everyone I was doing this freelance project, and I kind of, due to the nature of the project, decided that I needed something like React. So I used React, and I guess for the last 4 days I've been really getting to grips with that, and a lot of things in that I kind of think seem really simple, like the concept of props and state. While I felt like I understood the concept. Putting it into practice, I just had a bit of a howler, but I do think I'm sort of getting there now, and I've managed to make like a kind of like a wireframe, I guess, of my initial sort of app, and I'm quite happy, really liking it now. But you know me, I go through that process of hating stuff.
No, not you, bud. Never.
Not me.
It's like, I hate this. This is the worst thing ever made. Oh, actually, it's quite good. Actually, I really like it now.
Yeah. So I've got that. I'm really happy with that, and I've got my components. But the thing I've got now is just like I've just got this big mass of code, and it's untidy. So I'm going to look at Flux on your recommendation. So. Yeah,
no, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned like a React-like thing, because actually that brings up a good topic, because there are actually alternatives, aren't there? Like the concepts that React introduced, such as the virtual DOM, have been emulated in. I mean, I know that when it first hit the kind of the mainstream in 2013, I think late 2013, early 2014, there was like an influx. I mean, people do this, they all make their own little libraries that do the same thing, like have, kind of what React does, essentially, with the virtual DOM and the differing algorithms and things. I can't remember off the top of my head what other ones there were, but I remember you mentioned like sending me a link to one and be like, no, just use React. You might as well just use React. React is the one to use. Like it's obviously it's the tried true. It's what Facebook use. Interesting enough, actually, React's version, I don't think it's actually on version 1 yet. I think this is .15.
Really?
I think I'm right in thinking that. Like what version it is actually on? Yeah, version .014 at the moment. So it's on .015. They're actually dropping IE8 support, which I find interesting, because I'm then thinking to myself, does that mean they're dropping IE8 support at Facebook as well? Because that's quite a big step. I know that I think the day has passed where a lot of the IE versions, I think Microsoft are only supporting the latest IE version, which is IE 11 now. But people are still going to be using it, so you can't, right. I mean, it's weird with Facebook and things, because they're going to have to deal with things like internet cafe shops. I mean, I think they still exist, things like that, where people don't really update. So it's interesting if they're getting rid of IE8 support there in React. Will they be getting rid of it in Facebook in full stop, because some of their functionality obviously won't work, or they'll have to just have fallbacks? But I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Take all these things so much for granted. Like I can't go into too much detail, but like I was playing on an old IIS server the other day, remote connection, and just like I needed to move something. I was like, I'll just use the Dropbox, just the web version. And so obviously I couldn't use anything because the version of IE on there was so old, and just nothing worked.
What version do you know what version of Windows it was? Like, could you have a feeling of what IE?
Can't remember. I think it was I think it was 8. I'm pretty sure it was 8.
There you go.
And I think I had the same thing as well when I logged into my Gmail. Like it detected that I was using an old browser, and it was like, well, we're going to give you a limited, user experience, which was, I guess, good, graceful degradation, but the Dropbox one there was no graceful degradation. There was just this does not work. So good luck.
I think, I mean, this is the trouble. I think higher ups and managers and stuff and product people, they want it to be run everywhere, because that's the ideal, isn't it? It's like, we run everywhere. I mean, we're a website. You have to run everywhere. It has to be compatible with everything. But it's not developmentally physically impossible to do that because of all these things. I mean, I don't know how much code they're going to be able to get rid of in React, 0.15 from just these tweaks and that kind of little quirks and stuff that are in IE8 that they can get rid of now. But I mean, I know that happened in jQuery, didn't it? With like the 1 branch, and then when they went to the 2 branch, they removed like IE6 support and things like that. So I mean, this code is essentially code that's going down the wire. So you're sending this code no matter what to the user and every user, and that mounts up, specifically if you're in like a Facebook case. So it's really interesting. I'm really kind of like, I'm happy they're doing that. I'm happy they're kind of pushing it on. And the nice thing with React is it does work pretty much everywhere, and you kind of know it's been tested by a lot of people, because obviously Facebook use it among all the other companies that have adopted it. But I'm glad you're enjoying it, and it's interesting. I mentioned I saw it on your Skype display the thing today. Looked at React, now you're on Flux, and have you had a chance to look at it this afternoon?
Just have one of those days where everything has not happened. I've got my little to-do list and I've ticked off 1 out of 4, so it's not going well. But sorry, just massively segueing. But like you just mentioned about jQuery, and I saw on Twitter today that it's 10 years old today or something. I was like, I think it was a lot older than that.
I suppose it's been around because web years is just, it's on a different continuum, isn't it? Space-time continuum on it. Is that even a saying? I don't know.
Well, but I think that's probably about when I started getting into the web. And to
2005,
I thought like I was late, to the ball with jQuery, but using React, it's funny how you go from thinking like, oh, jQuery is the bomb, and you just, you have to use it. It's the best way to do things. And then suddenly something else comes along. And you're like, actually, like you say, all those manipulation events to the DOM are not a great idea. This isn't jQuery's fault, but that idea of using something like that, and then you get something like React with the virtual DOM, and you kind of think, why didn't we think of this sooner? Like or maybe it has been around for a long time, and maybe it's just now catching, getting the popularity it deserves. But
I mean, I don't actually know the history of it, to be honest. But I know that once it was introduced, it kind of, everyone thought, wow, this is awesome. I think it's only because the JavaScript VM has been able to be this performant, and things like that, with like the different algorithms and things like that, that kind of work is definitely the hard bit of it. And now obviously we're, I mean, the thing is, and the funny thing with React is, obviously it's great in some regards, because you're like, now you don't ever have to, you can think in states, you can think in, I'm in this state, you don't have to think in transitions, you don't have to think, what do I do? How do I get the DOM into this state from this state? Because there's an infinite amount of states, if you've got a finite state machine, this is a nice way of thinking about it, as opposed to what the DOM could be, because someone could change it, I mean, that's, but the trouble we have then is, things that we took for granted, such as adding in like jQuery plugins, and I know you were saying you were messing around with Google Maps yesterday. Well, these things have to be kind of rethought, and also the thing is also that the DOM becomes a whole different thing, and you do have to kind of follow the React way, and then it becomes like like animations become a lot harder, and you have to use CSS3 a lot for that, and that's great, but it adds an extra layer, and also then another thing is, how do you actually structure an app like this? Because if you go down like the Angular path, which kind of follows the backbone and the very MVC client MVC kind of patterns, and still hits the DOM and things like that. There's particularly Angular 1. Angular 2 has the diffing algorithm and things like that, but it's not all the way. There was a couple of really good good blog posts actually I'll put in the show notes of like kind of different, like having a look at both React and Angular 2 and seeing what the pros and cons of both were. But essentially kind of like Angular 2 is still a kitchen sink approach. It provides everything at the box, is highly opinionated. But it the way that I kind of thought about it was like, it's still treating like it's kind of using HTML and injecting JavaScript stuff into it, as opposed to what React does, which is fully JavaScript, but it brings in that HTML components, which is like the the virtual DOM, building the DOM up. And essentially, you're using JSX because you want to look like you're using HTML, but really you're not. You're using these React elements, which are then can be easily diffed, etc. But no, it's really interesting. And then obviously you need Flux in the mix. So that was what was really coming on to was you need this kind of unidirectional flow, because you can get that now but you kind of have to use that now. You know, and you can't just kind of break out. There's not really an escape hatch of being like, now I want to edit the DOM. You can't edit the DOM. And I think that, but React is quite nice in that it can be used on a page that has volatile state around it. Yeah. And you just have one bit, you know, so it can be introduced slowly where you have like, okay, this is one div in this page that is reactified essentially. Yeah. So, you know, you don't have to think about the whole app being that way. But once you're in that React world, you can't break out of it unless you really want to be, you know, kind of go on behind React's back and cause issues.
Sure. Yeah.
But no, I mean, other than that though, so have you been up to anything else? Like you looking at Postgres stuff and things like that? Postgres,
yeah, but you know, really, to be honest with you, a lot of the stuff I'm doing, like Laravel's doing it for me, so I've not had too much of a learning curve with that. I need to learn a little bit more, to be honest with you, and I certainly do want to look at a few things. I want to look at things like clustering, that kind of stuff. I was looking at...
so you feel this project that you're working on is going to have that scale that you're going to have to essentially think of that kind of from the off?
Well, yeah, definitely I am. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think I spoke about it before, but I mean, I'm more confident now, having read around that, you know, you could have billions of records in a table without actually needing to do much optimization. You know, providing your schema is pretty good, but I am still. I just want to make sure I'm a little bit more clued up. You know, and I looked at. I can't remember what it's not partitioning. The other thing I was looking at, where you kind of like got like child tables and a parent table, and you can kind of divide it up that way. But from what I read, like really, unless you kind of have one index that you're going to be searching on, you're not going to get that performance improvement that you'd like. It's really only if you've got one kind of index. If you start doing things like, searching on dates, you lose that performance.
Yeah, I mean, that is the thing, isn't it? An index is a king, and this is when you'll love Postgres for, because of its index support, like the advanced indexes. And I know you're saying about like like database sharding, table sharding, wasn't it? Like splitting up tables into separate tables, but you do need those aggregates and kind of where do I get that data, and a single index is needed. So you're going to do a lot of work around that fact. And I know there's so many different types of database. I remember like a couple of years ago reading like the 7 databases in 7 weeks book, and like one of them was this column. It's like HBase, I think it is, which is essentially just, you know, the idea of these split out columns. You know, like these just masses of columns. I think I'm right in thinking that. But yeah, it's interesting, these different database designs. But Postgres does kind of give you a good like dose of, you know, relational, and it gives you a bit of the unstructured kind of NoSQL movement with you know, JSON objects and things like that, and the data types that it has. So you're on the right track with using it, I feel, definitely. And I know you're thinking about like Heroku and things like that, kind of being able to like push it off to them.
A great you know, I like the .NET Rocks. You know, I don't do .NET, but I love the .NET Rocks podcast, and they had one of the guys from Heroku on there, and it sounded really interesting. I don't know the first thing about it, but it sounded like they could take the management of the database away from you, and they could even do...
they're a PaaS, aren't they? A platform as a service, so they can like they deal with like the database side, but they manage databases, but they also deal with like the, you know, like say you want a PHP application set up and things. Like, you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. They give you this platform in quotes that you can then use and deploy to, which is really nice. I suppose it comes as an overhead of like the cost and stuff, and you lose a little bit of control, but actually you got to weigh that up between where is my value? Is it in the product that I'm doing, or is it within the technologies and the stack that I'm using? Or
that's exactly it. And to be honest with you, I mean, I have no idea, you know, the income that the client makes from this application, but you know, for me, like even if it was like a couple of $100, it's all relative, isn't it? And
absolutely.
You know, what is that when you think the amount of software developers they have to employ, or the rest? It's probably not unreasonable, and it takes the stress away from you. So it's definitely something I think I will recommend to my client, and then, you know, they can choose, can't they? But
that's awesome.
But yeah. Other than that, what else? I had a little play with HTML5 geolocation, which, like I told you, was
scarily
just frightening. Yeah, I mean, literally. I mean, it got my address wrong by 1. Like, so got my next door neighbours.
How do you do that? How do you like reverse look up the geo, like the IP geolocation? Is it IP? No, it's not IP based. It's actually geolocation. So how do you?
That's right. Yeah, it's dead simple. Like I think literally you just get like geolocation.location or something in JavaScript, and it will come up with all the details. And then you could use something like you know, Google's API. Then if you want to then go and get more details, but I just used mine, and it just gave me the longitude and latitude, and I just, you know, Chrome's so good, you can just put the longitude latitude in the URL bar. It just came up with my address,
right.
basically.
Yeah, because I know that you can have your own offline, kind of geolocate. You can use geospatial or whatever these things.
Okay,
I know that,
right.
I know that Postgres has really good support for like geolocation and searching based on that, and you can get like big databases that have this information. But it depends. Again, like if you want, you're better off if in something like that where if you don't need the geolocation right there and then, you can always go off and query Google for it. I know that Google APIs, like Map APIs, now have limits on them unless you want to pay for them.
But they're pretty good, aren't they? I think they're like a couple of hundred a day or something.
Definitely, yeah. So you can definitely like balance it out.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, that is impressive technology, really, which I've known has been around for a while. But it's just one of those things. If you don't need to use it, you don't really use it, do you? So,
it's when you have the need, isn't it? It's a similar thing with like React as well. It's like when you actually have the need for it, and you want to learn it, and then you're like, well, no, sorry, when you had the need for it, then you end up learning it, and then you're like, this is really cool and stuff like that, and you can apply it in other areas.
That's it. And the only other thing I played with was seeds in Laravel, just for like with your migrations and stuff. So you hit refresh, and you can start off with all your data there, which is quite nice.
So is it static data then that you made, or have you made like generate? Because I know you can use like Faker and things like that can generate random data for you.
Oh yeah, I've just used static data, stuff. To be honest with you, it's just literally reading it in from like a text file. But the beauty of it is that you can implement it however you want. It's just you put your C files in there, and then whenever the migration runs, I think there's like a run command or something, and then you just put all your code in there, and it'll just do it for you. So
that does save a lot of overhead. It's one of those like, things where you think, well, that's simple enough, but you're like, how many times do you need to do that? And it's so nice having a clean instance, and if you're going to work in it with other people, give it to them. And I think that's where sharing databases between development and stuff can be a bit of a pain, because the database is very reliant on the fact of what version you have, with the actual application as well. So kind of shipping them together. So how do you do that? Do you have like a Vagrant file?
I was just going to say to you, that is a great topic, because I actually started looking at like syncing databases, and because obviously like I've got this great environment where I'm using Homestead, and I can just when I finish doing my session on my iMac, just push it up to Git, Bitbucket I use, and then I go on my MacBook, pull it down, and I'm away. I've got my Homestead environment there. That's perfect, apart from my database syncing, and I really don't know what the best solution for that is. Seeds are good, but
have you got so you've got the migrations, then you've got the seeds, and essentially you need kind of, because Homestead, I guess he's supplied like Taylor's like supplied that out of the box, like PHP, like Apache or Nginx, whatever. But and maybe MySQL, I guess he's probably leaned more towards than Postgres.
It's all on there as well. Yeah,
it's all on there. Brilliant.
You can just literally go to your config file, see which what you want to use, and they're all there, ready, waiting for you. So so that's really cool. But in terms of the actual stored data.
I suppose that's true actually, because you may be working on something and it's not seed related at that time. Like,
correct.
That isn't hard.
So I did Google that, but I couldn't really find an awful lot on there.
Other than you're going to use dumps and things like that, where you dump it out and stuff, which does seem a little messy. It's not like you're using it for tests, because tests obviously you can, if you're doing sufficient abstractions and things like that, you can kind of get away from having to hit the data store. But eventually you will have to hit a data store, but hopefully it won't be something that kind of complicated. The bits in between the unit tests can deal with that. But no, it is interesting that actually, and that's where it does win out a bit, because then you can say, okay, I've got this single data store that I can now go to, because your example is quite good. Having the iMac, then you have the MacBook, and you want to go between. But I want pretty much exactly what's on my iMac at that time, as opposed to I want a snapshot. So that's an interesting one. Definitely keep us like in tune what you're going to do there, like syncing stuff or sharing a database between builds, maybe like between which it can get a bit messy. Exactly. Yeah. But if I find any like good solutions, I'll let you know. But anyway, enough about me ranting about my ridiculous life. What about you? What have you been up to? Absolutely nothing. That would be really, really boring, wouldn't it? No, so first things first is I finally rebuilt my MacBook Pro. Oh, yeah. Finally. It's been a year or so, kind of, slowly chugging along. And I eventually decided, no, enough was enough. I need to just clean install.
So do you know what the main reason for like the slowdown was? Was it just?
I think computers do just fundamentally they get slower. Like it's code. It all
Junk.
just eats away and stuff. Junk kind of mounts up. I am one of these bad people who will install a program and just leave it there. And if I don't, what I mean. Like you'll try something out for a day. Oh, you don't realize it. You may have a problem that you then find a couple of applications for. You use it for a bit and then you get rid of it and you don't clean up after yourself. So I think it's good every so often to do this. But I mean the saviors for me were Dropbox, obviously, because it was all on, pretty much all my data was on there. GitHub, obviously, because GitHub was great because all my projects are on there. But then actually kind of what helped me a lot means I did a clean install. So with the Mac stuff, what you have to do is you have to download the actual file from the App Store. So you download, like, say, the new finally I get the new El Capitan, because I was just on Yosemite. I was like, I can't be bothered to. Oh, no, I was on Mountain Lion, one of them, but I couldn't be bothered. But then I finally did that, and then it's like, okay, but then you have to use something like a disk maker, and you have to, like, make it, not a disk, but pretty essentially copy it to a USB pen, where I can then boot off and do a clean install, because that's what I want. I want the whole hard drive wiped and start again, which was a lot easier it was a lot easier in the CD days, because you had that CD all done. Now you have to set up beforehand, but it was all good. And then it went fine, was great. And then a couple of really good tools that helped me a lot were obviously Brew is amazing. Homebrew, we all love Homebrew, because just setting up that was great after it. And then there was something called Cask or Cask Room. So Cask, I think it's Cask. Essentially it's kind of a layer on top of Brew. So Homebrew deals with the command line stuff. Cask will actually install applications like Google Chrome from the command line.
Oh, wow.
So I was there just, searching through saying, I need Google Chrome, I need PHP Storm, I need Audio Hijack, I need, X, Y, Z. And it was just installing for me.
And it worked fine?
It worked fine, all of them, because it does it in a really nice way. It's simple and it's great. I mean, people keep these things up to date, which is awesome. And another one actually was like, I like using the Deja Vu Sans font that's from Google. And then there's a Homebrew fonts cask as well. And you can just use that and download I want these fonts, please. And it's cool. Just awesome. I mean, probably took me about half hour to fully set up my machine. And that automation is just great for kind of getting it set up. And then, I mean, I won't go like kind of forget about Windows, because I know that when I was back running just a straight Windows machine and also dealing with like family members and stuff who still are on the Windows boxes, I use something called Nite. I'll put that in the show notes as well, and that's essentially kind of you. It's like a website where you can click like, I want this, and then it will package up an exe for you, which downloads them and installs them for you automatically. But it does it without all the malware, it clicks the right screens essentially. So it's so much easier. In fact, sometimes when someone wants something, I'll actually send them a version that is just maybe even that program just packaged up in an Nite, because I know it's going to be easier and simpler for them to download and install. As opposed to, because the amount of Windows screens, wizard screens, they just come up with all this crap, and then they're so sneaky with the way that they're like, oh, you have to click this if you do not want, and things like that. And I'm sure the legality in there is a bit bit weird. So, but I mean, that's great, and it was easy to do, and now it's running speedy. So I'm sure in a year's time I'll explain again that I had to install the next version of Mac for a clean build. But I know that you haven't done that in a while, have you?
Well,
we were talking about this.
Like you said, to be honest, I kind of imagine it would probably take me a whole weekend, because everything will go wrong. So like hearing your story sounds really good, but I don't really have your IQ, and for me, it would be a nightmare.
You're such a pessimist, man. You're such a pessimist.
I know, but it would happen. So, and then you get a phone call from me in tears, basically. So
you're thinking about getting an SSD, aren't you? Like you're looking at external. Because I was thinking that when you said external SSD, I was like, it's like really. I don't know whether because you'd have to have the right connection essentially. But because Thunderbolt. I'm right in thinking Thunderbolt is pretty damn speedy. Like, I don't know whether it's SATA kind of speeds or whatever. I mean, I'm not too up on the hardware side, but if it's quick enough, and people were saying like on the Mac like forums and stuff that it's pretty good. So are you looking into that? Are you still looking at external, or are you going to go and like try and
still looking at
open your iMac?
To be honest, I'm looking at it, because certainly like I'm sure most freelancers will agree that like your downtime, like when you're working for a company and things go wrong, your computer crashes or whatever, it's not so bad. Like, other than maybe your boss saying, "Oh, why is this work not done?" But when like this is your sole income and stuff, and everything depends on the work you get done, then suddenly speed becomes a huge thing. And like Sublime just crashed on me, and I had to restart my Mac, and that restart process took me 5 minutes. And you might think, oh, it's 5 minutes, but if you have to do that a couple of times a day,
it mounts all this kind of thing.
It really, really does, yeah. And time is money at the end of the day. So yeah, I am looking at that. If I can get an improvement, then I'll definitely do it. Yeah, but like you say, I'm just worried that it will get this SSD, and because it's an external device and that connection, well, I'll just lose the performance improvement. So I guess it's kind of like buying a Porsche and putting a Fiesta XR2 engine inside it. But yeah, so yeah, I need to look a little bit more into it. But I mean, I think, was it like £200 ish?
Yeah, around that mark, wasn't it? I think, and it was like 300, 400 for an internal? Because I mean, obviously you could do it yourself if you wanted to, but
I'd just be terrified.
Yeah, looking at like they'll I fix it or whatever, I fix it up YouTube videos. Yeah, it's a bit scary.
Well, the videos always make it look easy, but
they've done it so many times,
exactly.
And they are trained in the art of opening up these things that really have been designed not to be opened up. I mean, that's now what the thing is. Used to be hardware used to be for tinkering and things like that. But obviously Macs, people, they don't want you to open them up, so they make it a lot harder with glue and things like this. So what a pain. They make it horrible. So if you did want to do it, it's on 9 impossible, else you're going to break it, so you better just get someone else to do it.
Well, that's what I thought you were for. So
man, yeah. So I can risk, our friendship obviously, on a
you would be
iMac.
Liable if anything went wrong. And
well, this is it. I'll sign it off. You get my MacBook Pro, and
yeah.
Or I have to buy you a new iMac would probably be the terms. Oh man.
But, so you said you had something to talk about, right?
Well, yeah, I do. But before that, actually, I'd like to... So you actually retweeted it and liked it this morning. Thank you very much. I've been kind of on the blogging train or posting train the last couple of weeks. I've done one almost once a day during the weekdays, which is quite rare for me. I've just kind of had this thing where I'm like... Because sometimes, throughout the days, typically you will find something and be like, oh, that's quite interesting. But now I'm just like, well, no, I'm going to write it. And I just spend maybe 5-10 minutes just documenting it and releasing it and not thinking of it. Because my problem is I overthink things and then it becomes like, oh, I'm never going to release that. Or it has to be perfect and then it just drains me. This time I'm kind of trying to balance it out between it's good enough to go and that's fine, So it's been really interesting. And one of the things was actually, so my friend Kayvan, he recently tweeted a gist of... syntactic sugar or special. So Clojure has this idea of special forms, and one of its special forms is a let. And he's reading the the SIP book, which is the Structure Interpretation Computer Program book, at the moment. And he tweeted out saying, well, a let can actually just be essentially, in quotes, syntactic sugar around anonymous functions or a lambda called executed within it, like a self-executing lambda. And I thought this was awesome because this is, again, where Lisp wins out and is amazing because it's like these fundamental, small lambda calculus kind of ideas can just be composed, kind of use these fundamentals to build up the like this amazing language. I mean, one thing about Clojure, which is great, is like pretty much all of its stuff that you use, like cons and all these kind of higher-ish level but core kind of functionality of the Clojure language and library, are all macros that are written in Clojure. So it's Clojure written in Clojure. You'll use, so it's amazing.
Okay.
And I still don't know why, and I want to look into this as something for today that I wanted to kind of have a little look into, is why let is a special form, because special forms are like these magic, where it does magic. Because a lot of like what C does and things like that, they all do magic, whereas like a Lisp, typically, it's data. Wait, so what's the thing? So I've been reading up on the macros stuff on Clojure, and the saying is data is code, code is data. And essentially, you're coding. So the code that you write is actually a data. So you can treat it as data. But also the data that you write can be treated as code. And that's where macros come from. And all I did was, I just made this simple macro transformation. So it's a macro that just transforms from looking like it is a let, or it's a let, I named it. And it transforms it into this like self-invoking lambda. And it's really awesome and really fun to do, actually. And I'm really enjoying the Joy of Clojure book. And I'm really enjoying Lisp. And kind of Lisp is so simple, but so powerful. And you wouldn't think that it could work this way. Like, you could see, because, I mean, when, I think it's John, I'm going to forget his name, John McCartney, I think it is. When he wrote, like, when he thought up Lisp in, like, the 60s, he was thinking of AI. And you can see it because AI stuff like code, like it is essentially programs writing programs. Right. And the way that Lisp is made is you can do that with macros and these things in a very simple way. You've got to think of them not as the C macros, which are very simple compared to the advanced stuff that you can get away with in Lisp. So but that's on a tangent. But so a blog post I've been doing is really fun. And another thing that I've been doing is JavaScript stuff, kind of looking into that. And one thing I did want to mention actually to you, Mickey, is a library called Immutable JS. And I know because on your React adventures now, and you'll be looking at Flux, you will be introduced to Immutable JS. And it takes, so essentially Immutable JS is immutable data structures. Immutable data structures are data structures that when you change them, it doesn't affect what's already there, the reference, what's already there. It just creates a new reference. So it's shared, but they're shared in essence that they save, so you'd only change what you need to change. And it can rely on the fact that it's sharing, so it's not like a dupe. So it's not like I'm cloning the whole array every time and I'm given a brand new array. It's just shared pretty much. So Immutable JS uses the bitwise Clojure's hash map that was used in Clojure along with Scala. And it's amazing. Like, it's a really good library for JavaScript, really performant, and it provides all the benefits of immutability, which is, I know if something's changed. And that's one thing with React, which you really need to know. Like, Redux uses this a lot, and also map stores with Flux. Because within Facebook, there's the Flux, which is the dispatcher and things like that. But there's also a couple of little helpers, which are like the store. You'll typically have like a store that's kind of similar. All stores will be kind of similar and follow a similar pattern. And then you use something like the map store, which is very similar to what Redux does. And the way that it works out, if say like something's changed within this store, it's just as if the pointers, like it just does a pointer like check. It's like, oh, is it the same data you're pointing to? Oh no, you're not, because of immutability, because it changes the pointer. It's like, oh no, something's changed then, as opposed to having to do these deep nested checks, which takes so long. So Immutable JS is awesome, and the library itself has got some great things like update ins and things like that. Like I when I first started using it, I was very apprehensive of kind of taking full advantage of all of it, because I was a bit like, I don't really get this, and it can be a little horrible. Like, looking at the outputs and things, you have to remember to do to.js and things like that, because the outputs are essentially what the data structure is. Like, if you console log something out, like a record of it or something, it essentially is just the structure that it's internally stored at. It doesn't provide any nice pretty printing unless you do like .js, and you can get like a format you expect out. But like update in and delete in, and you can do these advanced nested things, and it really cleans up your stores, I found. Whereas I was doing a lot of weird stuff, I can now kind of really succinctly and declaratively, in like a very functional quote way, build up and like transform these data structures and stores. And that's about it really, about like things I've been doing.
Just reminded me, that's where I got burnt with React, was using a map, iterating through the map, and I was trying to call this, and then it wasn't working, and I suddenly realised, well, this is now kind of in the scope of that map.
Yes.
So I got burned that way, but then I realised you could pass a second parameter, so you put this after the map function, and then you're pointing to the right this.
Yeah, binding with this is such it's a funny one where you've got something called like console.log. I don't know if you've seen this before. So if you try and do, I don't know, I think Chrome fixes it automatically for you, or at least JS Bin does. If you do console.log and you assign that to like a just const log, I want to make console.log now just log, because it's nicer to do that, or you pass it in as something you want, when they it doesn't work, and it says, sorry, can't do that, because it doesn't, it can't find it, and it makes no sense. You're like, hang on, no, but it's log, it's the log function. But it's actually just simple, like kind of the basic JavaScript premise that it's console.log, so it's saying this, like I can't remember the exact thing, but essentially console is, like this then is bound to the object that calls it. So console.log means I want to call the log function, and because I'm calling console dot, it's the console that becomes this for it, like implicitly. So on normal times, like, say like in the, kind of our JavaScript, like Java-ish looking code, you'll do like new user.getName. Well, user.getName means, use the get name function that's on the prototype, but this is the user that I'm currently at, which is fine. But you can do some stuff like to get around, and this is where I've seen it quite a lot, is you do console.log.bind, and then you bind console. Which looks weird, but essentially all that's doing is it's saying, give me the log function of console, so the object.log function, and then bind it to console, meaning I really want the this of this to be console, and then when you pass that around, it just will use that as its bound. It will not, it can't be overwritten. And it's a really weird one. Like, I was looking at that like last week actually, and it stumped me out a bit, because I'm just like, and this is the thing with JavaScript, thinking JavaScript still confused me, and I still have to go back to like the fundamentals of it and kind of looking at the basic rules of how things work, because it has to make sense. Like, everything makes sense, but it is like working out why things happen. I remember like I think when I was struggling in the week, like you said to me, you said, stop trying to look at React in a very OO kind of way. I can't remember what the context was, but it was kind of a bit of a realization moment for me. I mean, definitely there's concepts there, but like if you think about it too rigidly, like that, I think that's part of the reason I was getting confused. But I think it kind of, with JavaScript now bringing class syntactic sugar into the mix, I think that may have been a mistake. Because it's still a prototypical language, but you can do, because it's very flexible. Yes, you can do stuff that looks very class orientated, but it's not a class based language. So you're going to get burnt by these things like the .this and stuff like that, and passing around. I mean, it's so powerful, the fact that you can say you can do it in PHP with closures. You can say now bind to and then pass whatever, and you can say that this is this, whatever it is now. That's great, but I think that's maybe a bit of a problem now, because, and also another thing with React, and it was an interesting one in that blog post that I read about Angular and React, is that Angular 2 stuff now is all written in TypeScript. Like, all the documentation, all the examples are TypeScript. That's great. It's like kind of giving you a base of like, look, this is, we're using TypeScript and stuff, blah, blah, blah. With React, because it's been around for a couple of years now, you've got ES5 stuff, which is, the bog standard. You'll see like react.create class and all of what you've had. I think you must have seen them actually, where you pass an on change and you have to bind this to it and things like that, because you can't, be sure that when it's calling it, that it's calling with this, when you want to reference something within that object. And then you get the 2016 examples, which is, the ES6 stuff, and then you see the JSX stuff, and it can get a little bit bewildering. And I think, the way that Angular have done it is that, look, this is exactly how we're doing it. Whereas React is kind of like the Unix approach, where it's like, we have all these bits, and you compose them together how you want. You've got React, but then you need a router. I need to find React router, or, there's like a host of different choices. Which is great because it gives you that flexibility. But out of the box at the start, it can be very intimidating. And specifically with like the Flux stuff, specifically with that, because, that stuff's like very, there's so many different implementations. And that's why I would say stick to the Facebook one first, and then look at Redux and things like that, because, I may be proved, like, people may tell me wrong, but I feel do that and have a look and play around with it and see what you like.
Do you think there's like Angular 2 and React is going to be like a VHS versus Betamax, or do you think there's plenty of room and people will just use one or the other?
I think it's funny actually, because a lot of the tweets around the new year in the JavaScript world, because I've now started kind of paying more attention, but a lot of them from like the big names were, or like quite high players were, let's learn from the community. Everyone can learn from Angular, everyone can learn from React, and everyone can learn from all these different technologies. And I think that's a really good, healthy way to be. It's like every technology's got something you can learn from. Every language has got something you can learn. You can't be too big-headed thinking that's the wrong way. But it's how your mind works. Like, like the Clojure community and Clojure script, like they love React because that allowed them to use their functional, immutable kind of declarative ways of, doing things, and let them do that, because React allowed that because it was very functional. And if you like that approach, to that functional approach, then it's great. But, if you don't like that and you like this kind of commonplace, the MVC patterns and things, it's not for you. You have to think very differently when you do the Flux stuff and with the React stuff. And it is hard. Like, I say to you, like, it is hard, but it's also easy once you've learnt it because it makes sense. Like,
completely agree.
It's a very simple pattern, but it's very hard because of how tight we are.
You've been preconditioned to thinking a certain way. As soon as you change that, that's where it becomes hard. But like you say, once you've learnt it, it is easy.
And it's makes so sense because you realise that Flux and React can't live without each other, really, because you can use React, but you can't use it to any extent without using something like Flux, which is this unidirectional thing. And you can't use Flux without React because you couldn't have this idea of just changing something. You would have to know what to change. So, it's awesome. It really is. And I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I'll probably be moaning about Flux this time next week, and then the week after I'll be like, I love Flux. But at the end of the day, I love learning as much as I moan about it.
Well, it's great that you get to do it on this project now, Yeah,
and like, true.
I mean, how are you finding? Because I think this would get me like, you're kind of having to learn on the job, or are you spending time learning? Like, are you like? You're saying, all right, I'm going to have a couple of hours learning it now, get on with some other stuff? Or is it a kind of, I need to learn this now because I'm doing this part of the project now, if that makes sense?
That's a good question. I kind of, a little bit of both, like, because I'm really lazy and I hate getting out of bed, like, I'll probably spend like half an hour reading, like in the mornings, and same again at night. And obviously I'll try and fit that around, like looking after Toby and stuff. But
and now the new dog as well, obviously.
And the dog, yeah.
Gemma, so, she's been really quiet, which is good.
Yeah, she's been good as gold actually. But so a little bit of both, and then obviously things come up, and you're like, I don't know how to do that, and then you have to go and learn. And like the Google Maps thing was a prime example of that the other day. But I guess I looked at the project, looked at the problems, and I tried to think what the best technologies were to solve those problems, rather than, I know jQuery pretty well, I can do this. I've tried to use what I think is the best technology to fit the problem. So time will tell if I've got that right or wrong. But I'm really liking React at the minute. I can see how, especially if I start using WebSockets, how that could work, fantastically well. I like the idea of results updating, just as
I think that's the thing. I think when the store changes, everything changes around that.
Yeah.
It's so cool because it allows you, your mind, your cognitive overhead just lowers because you can start thinking about one thing.
Yeah.
And testing it's so easy because, I mean, this was actually one thing. Sorry, complete tangent, but about all the Flux stuff. So recently, at my builder, I released this very simple. I mean, it was always on the card to do it, and we've got this new tradesman trade approval service where they can answer questions and stuff. And one of the things was that we wanted to be able to kind of record essentially their question answers to see how they did it. Did they do any copy paste and things like that? Anything, checking how they got to these answers. Nothing weird, not just trying to stalk. And we were like, okay, well, how can we do this? Well, it's like, it was the easiest thing to do with React because React deals with state change. And essentially what we do is we just, essentially what I do is I have on changes on the paste and on changes on the change of the value within the box. And I just store those events in a data structure and I send it off with it. And then we can replay them really easily. That's one blog post actually I want to do, how simple it was. And it kind of fundamentally, I mean, that was no Flux at all. That you can just think of as React, but something like that where you think it would be such a hard thing to do in a commonplace way because of the way that the common adage of how we usually treated our JavaScript MVC patterns, etc. like that. With this, it's very different, and you don't rely on the DOM, and you're relying on this event store. And I think you can take out the DOM. I think that's another thing I like now is we don't think of the DOM. I don't like thinking of the DOM. I like thinking of these, this data structure that I've got in front of me, and then it translates it to the DOM, and it could be any DOM. It could be the, Firefox's DOM. It could be IE's DOM. It could be Chrome's DOM. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I say, when you start using React, you start realizing the way you were doing things suddenly seems really prehistoric, and you think wow, that's not a nice way of doing it. But it's pretty cool.
I was going to say the other topic that I wanted to bring up, and you were kind of leading on to it, and then I completely did a Thai version, which is typical me. It's something I got into yesterday. It's Zen. It's the zone, or as psychology peeps call it, the flow. I'm just wondering, and I thought it'd be a really good topic. It's a shame that Lou couldn't make it on today, or Fraser, and I had more of a discussion, but we can do this. I thought, have you the flow and like Zen and the zone and all these names for it, essentially, you know, being in the programming zone, and everyone explains, you know, don't like disturb a programmer when they're in the zone, or when they've got their headphones on, or when they're coding. I'm just wondering, like, what do you think about it? Do you believe in it? Do you think it's a thing, or do you think it's all just made up? Or and what's your kind of take on it?
I absolutely agree with it. And I'm not in the sense that I think it's some sort of spiritual thing, but
this is it, because some people take it, you know, like they're like, oh, I want to get into the flow again, like it's almost like this spiritual high that you can get into that allows you just to program on a different level or something like that, you know? It's a very strange thing.
Right. But at the end of the day, like, you know, I mean, I'm very interested in like hypnotism, Paul McKenna, Darren Brown, those kind of people. And at the end of the day, the brain is a computer, so, you know, the way you treat it, the environment you put it in is going to, you know, affect the outcome. And I'm definitely, I mean, the thing I enjoy about freelance is that I can work the hours where I feel like I naturally want to work, rather than, oh, you know, man was made to work between 9 and 5. He will have 1 hour lunch at this time. And then, to me, that's a very old fashioned way of working. And it's not good.
That productive.
No, exactly. And especially if you've got family as well. Like for me, I want to spend time with Toby at dinner time. And I want to see my wife, want to ask her how her day was, etc. I'm so romantic. So to do that, I have that quality time, and then go and do some work for 3-4 hours. I love that. And at night time, when he's asleep, when Abby's gone to sleep, no distraction, just get on and do it. I absolutely agree. I mean, how about you?
No, I do, and I think, but it's funny because I started looking into it. I randomly thought of it today. I thought, you know, like, because I knew we were going to do a podcast, and I thought, well, it'd be interesting to talk about this because you do feel it. You know, I said to Amy yesterday evening, I said I had a really productive day today. I was in the zone all day, pretty much. You know, I was able just to get on with stuff, and it was interesting because there was a discussion, and I can't remember who I had it with, but a while ago. And it immediately came to my head where I'm like, the zone's good. You know, I thought, oh, it's amazing being in the zone. And then I remember him saying, I can't remember who it was, but he said, the zone, people think it's bad. And I'm like, why? You know, like, but it's because you're in the zone, you're more likely to, well, obviously you're blocking out everything else. So maybe you're not taking things in that you should, like you're just kind of steaming ahead. Maybe you're on a project and you're just like, I'm in the zone and I did all this work. Oh, it was all in the wrong direction. You know, like you need to touch base. Like some people purposely don't get in the zone so that they touch base, so they stay in the real world essentially on things. And it's interesting that, because I was thinking, I love being in the zone, but maybe I shouldn't, you know, like you have to bear that in mind. Like you can't just essentially go off into the zone, wander off. And I think it's just being more being reactive and respective of what's going on at that time.
Yeah, and I think you know, you probably work in an office where they're not all developers. It might be account managers, whatever. And I certainly had it with an ex-boss where that person had to suddenly do some coding, hadn't done it for a while, and then was shocked, like how their performance suffered because that person was getting interrupted, and I was like, yeah, thank you. I'm glad you realise. And it is like,
absolutely. I mean, the mental model. I mean, it takes a while to get into the zone, in quotes, you know, the flow, and it's like the mental model and the system in your head that you've got in your brain. I mean, once you've got that there, though, it only takes a phone call or an unplanned like tap on the shoulder for someone just to go, and then you've lost it for the whole day, and it's like gone. And it is amazing how it is so very fragile.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think a lot depends on the code base. Like if you've got a very well structured project where you're like, well, where's this code? Well, it's an asset, so I'm going to go to this. You know where things are, and that can really help. But if you're working on some legacy code where it's just like everything's just all over the place, includes. I mean,
that's interesting, because I find that I don't really get into the zone much or the flow when I'm bug fixing. It's more when I'm creating new things or rewriting something or that kind of thing, where you've got that kind of imagination where you're building. It's like you're having to construct it in your head before you put it down on paper, as opposed to, you know, in a bug, you're essentially looking through the forest and looking at all the stuff.
That's where I move away from the TDD sort of workflow in a sense, is because sometimes when I'm writing code, I am in the zone. I just want to pump out as much as I can, and then I'll go back and have a look to see if there's any problems with it.
I think that is I mean, people, I think with the TDD stuff, it is interesting there, because people would say, well, you should write a test first, obviously, and then you can do it. And it's true. Like, I always kind of then, I agree with it. I definitely do. And I don't do it enough. And I think that's where everyone comes from, you know, like they say they don't do it enough. But I always think to myself, should I do it in a prototype?
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I, you know, like, is it okay for me? I have a question. That's really a question I'd love to ask someone. It's like, do you do it in prototyping? Like, would you say I've got a proof of concept and I want to just, see if this works, and like, okay, it worked. Okay, can I go back now and write this refactor it? Should I refactor that or with tests, or is it better for me then to go in and say, okay, let's start again with the premise that I already know in my head that it's possible? Because I always think that, like, because a lot of the times when I'm doing something that's new, I like just testing to see if it's actually possible first. Like I spent like a day this week essentially just hacking together something to see if it was the boundaries there. Was I able to get there?
Completely agree. And why would you test that? I mean, this
is it. I mean, I wouldn't even know what to start with because I was just in this like zone of hacking around stuff. But maybe that is me, and that's something maybe I should look into, kind of, like research, because it is an interesting one where, if you've got kind of a plan set out already, TDD, and that's really useful and really good. But when you don't know where you're going, it can get really. I don't know if I could do it, or maybe I need to practice it. And I think that's because I know that Lou's been doing some TDD this week, and he's really enjoying it. I'm really glad.
Making me feel guilty. I don't like it.
Do you know we're technically working with him at the moment, so
Yeah, true. Do you know who we need?
Who do we need?
Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob. Well, we could try and get Uncle Bob on.
We tried. We pursued him, right?
And he said yes, actually. He did email back yes, but I need to pursue him more, actually. So I will email him after this podcast. I will email him and see.
Yeah.
Out of all the podcast requests he probably gets, 3 doesn't maybe be the one he does. He's got to, eh?
Top of his list, I imagine. Top. I'm sure he's heard of us.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. But no, I mean, one other thing, actually, with this flow thing is, like, how do you typically work best? Like, I know I work best. Like, it's funny, actually. So I've got a couple of modes. Like, one is silence. Like, sometimes I just need full-on silence, and I'll pause music, I'll pause anything that's going on, and I'll just do silence for like half hour, an hour. Yeah. Then I'll go into a mode of, I really want to listen to some music. That gets me up and gets me kind of in a mode like of working. Yeah. Or I may even watch a TV show on the other screen. This is it. Like, I may just watch it, some crappy TV show just because, like, I'm in the zone still, but I'm able just to kind of have that and it's just in the background. And I don't know, like, how do you do it? Do you have to be silent all the time? Do you have different modes?
That's different really ways interesting you say that, because like the silence thing would kill me. I have to have music. But a TV show would also kill my concentration. I wish I could.
Podcasts and things, because I like sometimes, it's only sometimes though. Sometimes I can listen to a podcast while working and it's fine. Other times, no, not a chance, because it does distract me too much. And
I can listen to a podcast, but the podcast doesn't go in properly, so it's like I can't win really.
Yeah, it has to be kind of like very high level kind of stuff,
Do you know what? I think it'd be really interesting. I'm sure there are reports out there, but I imagine if you were to really dig into it, you probably find that people are only really in the zone maybe 6 hours in a week. I bet it's something
I think you're probably right, actually. Like, I think, I can't think I'm ever in the zone more than an hour a day on average. If that.
I agree.
Where I'm actually, able just to get on with stuff in that environment. And I do think the zone is only beneficial to some sort of work. Like constructing something new, building something, learning something, as opposed to, say, bug fixing, which maybe isn't the case.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. And I think that is just, human nature, isn't it? I think, I remember hearing like, we can only really concentrate for like 20-minute stretches at a time.
That's insane. Why are all university lectures and lectures like, I had 2 hours? I had 2-hour lectures.
I know, same, yeah. But I wonder what would happen if you just had more lectures that were like 20 minutes. I wonder if you'd learn more.
And that's the thing, like bite-sized. Like, I think that's where stuff like, because there's a lot of YouTube videos. I can't remember what it was, but like Code Academy kind of things, and like even just like GCSE level kind of, maths and things like that. Like Khan Academy, I think it was. And they just had like 5-minute videos about maths, like different things in maths, like averages, what are they? And that's it. And I'm sure I would learn better in those like bite-sized little chunks that I could then watch and things like that, as opposed to an hour lecture on something.
Completely agree. They're the kind of YouTube videos I love, the really short ones. They're the ones I learn from. And we say this like after we've just been ranting for 50 minutes. I
know. Sorry, this is not a bite-sized podcast at all.
No, I think people listen to like the music at the beginning, and it's like just
they've got it on their podcast. They forgot to unsubscribe, so they're like, exactly. Not that one again. Quickly go.
Yeah, exactly. But that is an interesting one, actually.
No, I thought I'd bring it up. I mean, it is, for me, like, I don't, because you get a lot of people who are like life hackers in quotes who really love like optimizing their life and will do things for, whereas I kind of feel that things just kind of happen, like I don't really believe, like in optimizing everything to the perfect schedule is going to produce these outputs and stuff. Not very scientific on it. I'm more arty about it, where it's just like you feel like you can do it. And, I feel there's like a balance, an equilibrium there where, like you'll have some days where you do really good, have good Zen and stuff like that and good, could like flow. But then there'll be some days where you just can't get in there. But it's okay because you can balance them out, and over the course of a period, you can evaluate. Yeah, okay, there was enough there.
Well, I said to you this week, didn't I? Like I was feeling really guilty, like I'm not getting enough work in, and to be honest with you, that for that very reason, this week I've actually set a timer. And I
how's that been going actually? Because that's the thing. You felt last week you just got no work done, even though you were doing the hours. Like, but you didn't feel that. You didn't get that feeling. Like there's some, for some reason I get it too, and I'm sure a lot of people do. Is that feeling of I've done enough today? But it's like perfection. It's unachievable. Like, how do I get that feeling again?
Exactly. I think don't be too hard on yourself.
You can't quantify it, can you? You can't quantify a feeling like that. You can obviously if you. I'd say time it. Something like a timer saying if I'm going to do X amount of hours a day.
Yeah, that is the way to do it. And I've actually been surprised by I have done a lot of hours. Probably because I've accidentally left my timer on when I've gone out running. But like, I think
you're a really quick runner though, so I'm worried about that.
Oh, thanks, man. But yeah, I think it is important to cut yourself some slack. And I think writing a to-do list does give you a sense of
satisfaction.
Yeah, because otherwise you get to the end of the day and like, oh, I've not done anything, but actually you probably have. And you just don't realise.
Yeah, breaking a task up. I mean, that is the whole divide and conquer, isn't it? Where break a task up into small manageable chunks. And again, that's the TDD way where you're breaking up a problem into its like constituent parts that you can slowly build up. Yeah. And it's like breaking it up and then you get those results. You'll get the green when you see a test passing or a test suite passing, things like that. You'll get the happy feeling when you're able to tick something, or you're able to drag it into the complete pile or under review pile, or when you get to do a pull request and it's all on there. And but
exactly.
Again, it's not an exact science. I think
absolutely
we all want that. We all want that, and I think it hurts us that we want that feeling all the time. I want my head to say, yeah, you've done enough work today. Feel good every day. But sometimes you don't get that, and you then have to think. You can't overthink why. You have to, kind of rationalize it.
I certainly think it's. That's probably a little bit arrogant for me to say this because I've not worked in other careers, but I certainly feel like it's a developer thing as well. Especially, we probably feel it twice as hard as other careers. I mean, I've worked. I had another career before I got into development, and I didn't feel it like I feel it with this. To be honest with you.
No, I mean, that's interesting. I think, it's funny because obviously if you'd have I'm sure there's other podcasts out there on other topics and they'll be talking probably about the exact same thing and being like, it's a whatever problem, and it's a scientist problem or something. And it's like, well, I think we all kind of feel it to some extent, but, I say we feel it obviously in our community a lot.
Well, I think it's ingrained in us to judge our kind of performance on the output, on the
it's quantitative effect, like quantitative things, something that we can actually, because in quote, if you're a computer scientist, which actually I was listening to a really good DHH, David Hannemir Hansen, he was on a Computer Science Daily or Computer Weekly Daily or Computer Weekly Daily. That's a really, really good title. Computer Science Daily or something like that it was, and he was talking about like how people, he did a 2010 like keynote on computer science. Are you a computer scientist? Are you a computer programmer? We try and consider ourselves scientists, but we're not really, or there are sciences in computing. Like you can quantify some things, but some things aren't. And it's like, is it an art form then? And things like that. And it's really interesting. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
But it is interesting where we do try and get ourselves and quantify ourselves in these means and like kind of put a number to something or a Boolean yes or no. But there's a lot of floating point in it.
And in our career, we shouldn't. In our kind of industry, we shouldn't, because you shouldn't just say, "Well, I pumped out 2,000 lines of code today. What a great achievement!"
Well, this is it. People used to think that was productivity, though. Like I think during the 80s or 70s and 80s, like that was a thing. Like if you do your 2,000 lines of code, then you can go home, kind of feeling. And it's like, wow. That's so
it doesn't
insane.
give any sort of guarantee that it'll be a good code.
It really doesn't, does it? And it's like, and there's no, and it's again, I think it's also people with their 100% test coverage.
Yeah.
That doesn't actually mean that it's
just
fully,
a pat on the back.
It's just a pat on the back. Like, it's not actually a thing. Again, you're quantifying it. You're trying, we have this many tests. Oh, I have to write this many tests in a day. Or, it's a really strange thing, I think, where people, again, we all try and quantify these things, but we really shouldn't.
And you're probably only going to end up testing things that you're kind of confident will work. And
this is it. All these paths have to be hit. So
yeah, exactly. That's it.
But I think then it's the whole value thing, and then that's all relative, and that's what people hate it. And I think we all do. I know I find it sometimes where, what's the value in this?
Yeah.
And then that's a relative question, because you can't really put a number to that, or you could try, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I thought that's a good topic, and
definitely. Yeah.
No, man. Well, I'm going to let you be now, because I know you got to get back to work.
We've pretty done a
decent shift there. We've done a whole hour. Obviously we can quantify that and say it's a good podcast. Well done.
I'm going to put it on my to-do list and tick it off.
You're going to tick it off. Good. Okay, nice. Brilliant. I'll link it, and I'm just going to put it in. That's a good lunchtime there. All right, then, audience. Well, it's been a really great episode.
You can't say that. We have to let listeners decide that, to be honest with you.
Well, that's true, actually. I feel it's been a good one.
I feel it have to.
Right, audience, do you feel it's been a good episode? Put it in the show notes.
Put it
in. Yeah, put it on Twitter. Put it on Instagram. Put it on iTunes. I just think iTunes comments would be great. If people want to do iTunes comments, I'm going to do it from other podcasts I listen to. It helps other people recognize. iTunes algorithm allows, works out by comments and stuff that people, you're more likely to get to more people's ears. So I want to get into people's ears. That's true. Okay, wow. That's a thing. Anyway, audience, it's been a great episode. Well, I think it's been a great one. Mickey does too. I'm not going down that rabbit hole again. And we will speak to you next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.